The morning everything collapsed started like every other Monday. Cold coffee, traffic that crawled like a dying animal, and the familiar gray building of Carter Logistics rising from the fog of downtown Chicago. For 3 years, Ethan Hayes had walked through those glass doors at exactly 8:12 a.m., not early enough to look desperate, not late enough to look careless, just disciplined. Ethan believed in discipline because discipline was the only thing poverty had ever taught him. He grew up in a tiny Ohio town where the paint peeled off houses like sunburned skin and dreams died before high school graduation. His father had worked in a factory until the machines replaced him. His mother worked double shifts at a diner. Ethan had one rule growing up: work harder than everyone else. That rule carried him to Chicago, and eventually to Carter Logistics. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't exciting, but it paid $64,000 a year and came with health insurance. To Ethan, that was stability, and stability meant survival. He stepped inside the office, greeted by the low hum of printers and fluorescent lights. "Morning, Ethan," said Megan Alvarez, the receptionist. "Morning." He sat at his cubicle and opened the shipment logs. Spreadsheets, numbers, freight routes, thousands of tiny details that kept the company moving. Ethan loved details. Details were where mistakes lived, and mistakes were what he existed to prevent. But that morning, a mistake had already happened, and he didn't know it yet. "Etsy, 14, his desk phone rang. Mr. Carter wants to see you." Ethan blinked. Victor Carter, the owner of the company, rarely called people into his office unless something was wrong. Very wrong. The hallway to Carter's office suddenly felt longer than usual. Through the glass walls, executives whispered over coffee. When Ethan entered, Carter sat behind a massive oak desk like a judge about to deliver a sentence. Next to him stood Daniel Brooks, the operations manager. Daniel avoided Ethan's eyes. That was the first warning sign. "Sit down," Carter said. Ethan sat. Carter slid a printed document across the desk. A shipping invoice. Ethan recognized it instantly. "Do you see the problem?" Carter asked. Ethan scanned the numbers. Then he saw it. A $10 discrepancy in the fuel adjustment column. $10. His chest tightened. This must be a rounding error in the system," Ethan said calmly. Daniel cleared his throat. "Actually," Daniel said, "it was entered manually." Ethan looked up. "That's impossible. I didn't—" "You signed it," Daniel said. Ethan looked at the signature. It was his. But something felt wrong. Carter leaned back in his chair. "You understand what this looks like, Ethan?" "Yes," Ethan said quietly. "It looks like fraud." The word hit the room like a gunshot. Fraud? Over $10? Ethan swallowed. "With respect, sir, that's ridiculous." Carter's eyes hardened. "You think theft is ridiculous? I didn't steal anything." Daniel sighed dramatically. "We checked the system logs. The edit came from Ethan's terminal." Ethan felt heat rising in his chest. "That's not possible. Someone—" Carter slammed his hand on the disk. "Enough." Silence filled the room. "For 3 years I trusted you," Carter said coldly. "And this is how you repay the company? Sir, it's $10. That's not the point." Carter stood. His voice turned icy. "We run a business based on trust." Ethan felt the ground slipping beneath him. "You're firing me over $10? Carter's expression didn't change. "I'm firing you for dishonesty." The words felt surreal. Ethan sat there, numb. 3 years. Late nights. Weekends. Every detail perfect. And it ended like this. Daniel slid a termination form across the desk. "Sign here." Ethan stared at the paper. Something deep inside him shifted. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. He signed. Carter nodded toward the door. "Security will escort you out." Ethan stood. The hallway seemed quieter now. People pretended not to look, but they were looking. Everyone always watched someone else's downfall. As Ethan packed his desk, Megan approached cautiously. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "It's fine," Ethan said. But it wasn't. At the elevator, Ethan took one last look at the office. 3 years of loyalty erased by $10. Then the elevator doors closed. When Ethan stepped outside, Chicago's wind cut across his face. Cold. Sharp. He looked up at the Carter Logistics logo shining above the building. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt since childhood. Helplessness. But beneath that helplessness, something else began to grow. Quiet. Passion. Dangerous. And Ethan Hayes didn't know it yet. But losing that job would become the most important moment of his life. Part 2. Loss, betrayal, and emotional collapse. The first night after losing the job felt unreal. Ethan sat in his small apartment staring at the city lights through the window. Chicago never slept. But Ethan couldn't move. His laptop sat open on the kitchen table. 32 job applications. 3 automated rejection emails already. And one terrifying realization. Rent was due in 11 days. His savings account showed $1,240. 3 years of loyalty reduced to a number smaller than a used couch. Ethan rubbed his face. What the hell happened? The question kept repeating. Because something about the situation didn't make sense. Ethan had built his reputation on precision. He triple-checked every entry. Every number, every shipment. A $10 mistake? Impossible. Unless someone had made it look like his mistake. His phone buzzed. A message from Megan. Megan? Hey, I probably shouldn't say this, but something felt weird about that meeting today. Ethan's heart beat faster. Ethan, what do you mean? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, her message arrived. Megan, Daniel was in Carter's office for an hour before they called you. Ethan stared at the message. Daniel Brooks, operations manager, and Ethan's direct supervisor. They had never liked each other. Ethan worked too carefully. Daniel worked too quickly. Ethan followed rules. Daniel bent them. More than once, Ethan had quietly corrected Daniel's shipment entries. Errors worth thousands. But Ethan never exposed him. He believed in loyalty. Now he wondered if loyalty had been a mistake. The next morning, Ethan visited the bank. Not for money, for answers. His old college friend Ryan Caldwell worked there. Ryan specialized in corporate financial audits. When Ethan finished explaining everything, Ryan leaned back in his chair. You're telling me a $5 million logistics company fired their most accurate analyst over $10? Yes. Ryan frowned. That makes 0 sense. Ethan nodded slowly. Exactly. Ryan opened his laptop. Let me ask you something, Ryan said. Who benefits if you're gone? Ethan didn't answer immediately, but one name sat in his mind like a loaded gun. Daniel Brooks. Ryan typed quickly. Carter Logistics has been struggling lately. Ethan blanked. What? Yeah, Ryan said. They took a massive loan last year. $5 million. Ethan felt his stomach drop. $5 million? That's strange, Ethan whispered. What? Ethan leaned forward. Because our shipment volume has been declining for months. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning they shouldn't be expanding. Ryan turned the screen toward him. The loan is due in 8 days. 8 days. Ethan felt a strange chill. The pieces weren't clear yet, but something ugly was hiding underneath. That evening, Ethan returned to his apartment and opened his laptop. He still had remote access to some old shipment archives. Not illegal, just overlooked. For hours, he reviewed data, shipment delays, fuel cost discrepancies, contract cancellations. Then he saw it. A pattern. Daniel Brooks had been approving shipment adjustments that quietly redirected freight contracts to a smaller logistics company, Brooks Freight Solutions. Ethan's chest tightened. He opened the company registration. Owner, Daniel Brooks. The room suddenly felt colder. Daniel had been siphoning clients, using Carter Logistics resources. And Ethan had unknowingly corrected the accounting mistakes that could have exposed it. Until Daniel needed him gone. The $10 error? It wasn't random. It was a setup. Ethan leaned back slowly. 3 years of loyalty, destroyed by a man covering his own theft. His phone buzzed again. Ryan. Ethan, you still there? Yeah? Ryan's voice was quieter now. You should know something else. What? The bank that issued Carter's loan is looking for someone to buy the company if they default. Ethan felt the weight of the sentence. Buy the company. The number appeared in his mind. 5 million. Impossible. Ridiculous. But the idea refused to leave. Ethan looked again at the Carter Logistics building glowing across the skyline. Daniel thought he had eliminated the problem. Victor Carter thought he had removed a dishonest employee. They both believed Ethan Hayes was finished. And for the first time since the firing, Ethan smiled. Not with happiness, but with understanding. Because sometimes the worst humiliation in a man's life is just the beginning of his revenge. Part 3. Transformation and silent preparation. The next 6 days transformed Ethan Hayes. Not physically, but psychologically. The shock faded first, then the anger. What remained was something far more dangerous. Clarity. Ethan spent the first night running numbers. Every financial record he could access. Every shipment contract. Every fuel adjustment. Carter Logistics wasn't dying. It was being slowly drained. And the parasite was Daniel Brooks. Daniel had been quietly redirecting Carter's biggest clients to his own side company. Not enough to raise alarms. Just enough to weaken the company until it collapsed. Then Daniel could buy the remains cheaply. A perfect corporate theft. Unless someone stopped him. Ethan closed his laptop at 3:47 a.m. For the first time in days. He felt calm because he finally understood the battlefield. The next morning he visited Ryan again. Ryan listened quietly as Ethan explained the entire scheme. When Ethan finished, Ryan stared at him. That's actually brilliant. Ethan didn't smile. It's also illegal. Ryan nodded. So what's your plan? Ethan looked out the window. Carter Logistics defaults in 2 days. Correct. And the bank sells the company. Ryan nodded again. Usually to whoever can cover the debt. Silence filled the office. Then Ryan laughed. Oh my God. Ethan said nothing. You're serious? Yes. Ryan leaned forward. You don't have $5 million? No. Ryan rubbed his temples. Then how exactly do you plan to buy a $5 million company? Ethan finally allowed a small smile. By proving it's worth more than that. Ryan stared. Then, slowly, he began to understand. You're going to expose Daniel? Yes. And show the bank the company is being sabotaged? Yes. Ryan whistled softly. That might work. Ethan's voice was steady. It will work. Ryan studied him. You've changed. Ethan didn't deny it. Pain changes people. Humiliation changes them faster. But betrayal? Betrayal rebuilds them from the inside. For 2 days, Ethan prepared. He compiled evidence. Shipment diversions, client transfers, fake invoices. Daniel had been careful, but not careful enough. The morning Carter Logistics officially defaulted on the loan. Ethan walked into the same bank where Ryan worked. This time wearing a suit, Ryan introduced him to the acquisition officer, a gray-haired woman named Margaret Lowell. She scanned Ethan's file skeptically. You were fired from this company 6 days ago. Yes. And now you want to buy it? Yes. Margaret leaned back. Why should the bank take that risk? Ethan slid a folder across the table. Because the company isn't failing. She opened the folder and began reading. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Margaret's expression slowly changed. Where did you get this information? I worked there. She closed the folder. If this is accurate, it is. Then the company's losses were engineered. Yes. Margaret studied Ethan carefully. You realize exposing this will destroy several careers. Ethan's voice remained calm. They destroyed mine first. Silence. Then Margaret asked the question that mattered most. If the bank agrees to restructure the debt, how much are you prepared to invest? Ethan slid another document forward. Ryan's personal investment agreement. And something else? A silent partner. Margaret's eyebrows rose. You found investors fast. Ethan nodded. I had motivation. Margaret closed the folder. Well, Mr. Hayes. She stood. Let's see if your revenge plan works. Part 4. The Calculated Revenge. 1 week after Ethan Hayes was escorted out of Carter Logistics, he walked back through the same glass doors. But this time, security opened them for him. Employees whispered, confused, uneasy. In the conference room, Victor Carter sat with Margaret Lowell and 2 bank representatives. Daniel Brooks stood beside him. Ethan entered last. Victor Carter's face turned red. What the hell is this? Margaret spoke calmly. Mr. Hayes is the new majority shareholder of Carter Logistics. Silence exploded across the room. Daniel laughed nervously. This is ridiculous. Margaret slid documents across the table. Ownership transfer finalized this morning. Victor Carter looked stunned. You sold my company? You defaulted on the loan? Daniel turned toward Ethan. You think you've won? Ethan's expression stayed calm. No. He opened a laptop. I know I have. The screen displayed financial records. Shipment diversions. Client transfers. Daniel's face slowly lost color. Victor Carter stared at him. Daniel's voice cracked. This is manipulated data. Ethan spoke quietly. Check the timestamps. The room fell silent. Victor Carter read the documents again. Then again. Finally, he looked at Daniel. You stole from my company. Daniel said nothing. Security entered the room, and Daniel Brooks was escorted out. The same way Ethan had been. But Ethan felt no joy, only closure, because revenge was never about victory. It was about balance. Part 5. Consequences. Twist and final truth. 3 months later, Carter Logistics was profitable again. Clients returned. Contracts stabilized. And Ethan Hayes sat in the same office that once belonged to Victor Carter. But something unexpected happened. Victor Carter returned. Not as an owner, but as a man asking a question. Why did you keep me on as CEO? Ethan looked out the window. Because you built this company. Victor Sahil. I destroyed your life. Ethan shook his head slowly. No, you fired me. But Daniel created the situation. Victor looked confused. So you forgive me? Ethan smiled faintly. No. Victor waited. Then Ethan said quietly, but revenge isn't about destroying people. It's about revealing the truth. Victor left the office without another word. Ethan watched the city lights flicker across Chicago. And for the first time since everything began, he felt peaceful. Because the greatest revenge had never been buying the company. It had been something far simpler, proving that the man they thought was powerless was the only one who truly understood the game. Ending. Revenge doesn't change the past. It doesn't erase humiliation. It doesn't heal the nights spent staring at a ceiling wondering where life went wrong. But sometimes, revenge does something else. It forces the world to see the truth it tried to ignore. And Ethan Hayes finally understood a lesson no one had taught him growing up. The most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone believes they've already defeated.